All right, everybody. Good late morning. What is going on? We are approaching the end of the 48-hour grace period, so feel the feelings that you need to feel, but by this evening, try to move past it, try to start thinking about the next game, and let's remember that technically speaking, everything we want to do is still in front of us. It's just a little bit harder now. And I know that you guys are not going to bail on this team yet. There may come a day where some Seahawks fans start to bail on this team, and that day could be coming in as soon as a month. But right now, we're 0-1, and we lost a tough game in week 1. But I know that nobody's going to be giving up yet. We got to see a little bit more before I think any reasonable person's ready to give up. So moving on, after tonight, I am going to be streaming later tonight. Going to do like a midweek therapy session type stream. I thought it would be a good idea to add another stream to the weekly cycle. So you've got the Thursday streams, the post-game streams. You've got the Husky stream on Saturdays most weeks. And I thought adding a Tuesday stream would be a good way to add another bit of discussion, add another little bit of streaming to the schedule. So keep an eye out for that. I want to talk a little bit about the Seahawks offense. I want to talk a little bit about some of the numbers coming out of that game because there's so much to talk about with this offense. It was obviously the side of the ball that was the weakest by far in that game. And there's a lot that needs to be pulled apart and a lot that needs to be understood. And I think that it's important we don't let false narratives run away with the conversation. We want to at least try to have a real and honest conversation about the problems that we had and the things that caused us to lose that game ultimately, which, again, I'm not saying the other parts of the team were perfect, but this offense stood out for being really, really bad throughout. So just basically a random assortment of things that I picked up from X over the last, I'd say, 24 hours, maybe a little bit more. And I just kind of want to capture the overall picture of why this offense did what they did on Sunday, because I want to be clear here. I don't think there's any excuse for being as bad as we were on Sunday. That is a Niners defense that has some good players, but when we get to the end of this season, I'm telling you right now, I don't believe that Niners defense is going to be the best defense in the league. So you got to show up a little bit better than that at home in week 1. So I want to start by talking about the decision to kick the field goal at the end of the game with like 3.5 minutes left instead of going for it on 4th and 1. So a few different angles here. And I want to explore this a little bit because my initial thought was that it was a no-brainer go-for-it situation. I was under the impression that it was like 4th down and a foot, maybe 2 feet. Apparently it was a full yard, maybe a little bit more. That does change things a little bit. And I found this to be very interesting because usually win probability will always side with the argument to go for it. According to win probability, and we see this in this tweet here, it actually thought kicking a field goal was better by 1%, by less than 1%, 76% versus 75%. So that is definitely an interesting side of this. And I do want to at least put some light here. Before I go any further into this, I want to tell you a little bit about my friends over at Sleeper. Have you heard about the Sleeper app? It is the best way to experience and connect over sports together with other users. It's a one-stop shop for all your sports needs. Go download the app now. You can celebrate and chat on games in real time with others. You can get the fastest scores, news, and alerts, all that right at your fingertips. And of course, you can play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So you can enjoy sports the way they were meant to be, together. Download the #1 sports app today. And when you go, use promo code SBN, that is SBN, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. So check out Sleeper today. Don't forget promo code SBN, because my initial read was, oh, this is a no-brainer, go for it, and we completely bricked this situation, but win probability says something else. However, and this was another thing that I found very interesting, Dugar talks about this in a couple tweets he had. McDonald talked about the decision on Seattle Sports Radio, the 4th and 1 from the 19-yard line. Their model, so they have their own model that determines whether or not they should go for it or kick in certain situations. Their model actually said to go for it. So their model, I guess the first thing you take away from that is their model is different than the win probability model. However, despite the model saying they should go, McDonald decided to go ahead and kick. And he gave a full explanation of why here. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Pause it, or better yet, go look up Dugar's Twitter account or X account, whatever they're calling it now, and read the whole thing over on his account. But the short version is that he thought that there were some extenuating circumstances, like not being guaranteed to get a touchdown even if you get the 4th down, the Niners having all of their timeouts, the fact that there was enough time left for the Niners to potentially get the ball back, go 3 and out, and punt, which I don't agree with that. I can't imagine the Niners doing that, but whatever. The point he's trying to make is he actually went against the in-house model. And there's certainly a lot to discuss here. My thing is, if you are going to pound your chest all offseason about how you're going to be a tough-nosed, smash-mouth running team that's going to control the line of scrimmage, and you're going to spend a 3rd-round pick on Jalen Milroe, then one way or the other, you need to go for that. All right? That's kind of my point of view on it. Don't get all scared. Don't turn into a scaredy cat. Don't throw away the philosophy that you are trying to implement on this team in one of the most pivotal moments of the 2025 season in week 1. This is maybe the biggest decision of the game, and you decided to go finesse. Again, I'm not saying it had to be Milroe doing it, but that was an option. You could have Milroe run an option play. You could have Milroe just run QB power. These are things that you could put in your repertoire on short yardage. And if you're going to spend a 3rd-round pick on the guy, let's see some return on the investment. That's something that he can do at a high level. And you already picked up 2 yards on the A.J. Barner QB sneak earlier in the game. I understand that the running game didn't work as well as you might have desired earlier in that game, but are you really going to abandon your identity completely because of that? I'm going to say it again. The Niners do not have elite interior defensive linemen. You're not running into a brick wall of Aaron Donald and DeForest Buckner and Warren Sapp or anything. You're running into Alfred Collins, C.J. West, Talia Davis. If you can't get a yard there, then first of all, I kind of feel like you just deserve to lose anyway. And even then, the game is not over. Like, at that point, the Niners get the ball right there inside their own 20. I don't know. I wanted to spend a little bit of time on that, though, because it is an interesting debate. So let's look at some numbers. A lot of this is courtesy of Seahawks Nerd, who does great work over on X. He did some work with the win probability, and we're going to go ahead and start there because win probability was what we were just talking about. So more win probability stuff. I find this to be very interesting because it does, again, help feed into the narrative that Sam Darnold played at least fine. And I do want to say my impression of Sam Darnold coming out of that game on Sunday is that he did play fine. I just don't know if he played good. Some people have said he played great. I don't know. I don't know if I can go that far. I can say that a lot of the bad things that happened may have not been his fault, but I don't know if I can make that leap to great. But let's take a look at some of the win probability data he posted. The Seahawks gained 11% in win probability on Sam Darnold dropback. So that basically means every play where Sam Darnold dropped back to throw, whatever the result of the play, be it a sack, and there was only one sack, incomplete pass, complete pass, or Sam Darnold scramble, prior to the sack fumble, which was, of course, the most impactful play of the game, the Seahawks were actually gaining in win probability. They also, and this was kind of interesting, although it shouldn't be surprising to anybody, they gained 7% on Zach Charbonnet carries and lost 10% on Ken Walker carries. So overall, their run game, their rushing offense was a net negative, which is, of course, a big problem. But it does speak to the fact that Charbonnet was more effective in this game than K9. I'm going to say it again, though. Watching some of those plays, I don't get the sense that K9 was doing anything all that wrong in that game that made Charbonnet radically better. Some people have suggested that when Charbonnet was in the game, we were running mostly zone and we were doing it well. And when Ken Walker was in the game, we were running gap and not doing it well. I don't know why we're doing that. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me on the surface of it. I don't know why we feel obligated to run gap with Walker. I mean, running zone with Charbonnet is fine, but I'm saying you can run zone with both. I don't understand why they're making that decision, but that was something that seemed to come back to bite them. This team, by and large, should be built to be running zone, so stick to that. But going deeper into this win probability thing, here's the crazy thing. The Seahawks gained 38%, which is by far the most positive, impactful thing the Seahawks did on Sunday on Sam Darnold dropbacks if you take away the final play, the sack fumble, and the 4 screens, which I think one of the screens picked up at least a couple yards, but the other screens were basically a disaster. So what that means, if you do the math, what you know what that tells you? If you do the math, the Seahawks offense lost 27% in win probability on passes behind the line of scrimmage. There were only 4 passes behind the line of scrimmage. And somehow they dragged our win percentage down 27%. That's legitimately really hard to do. And it just speaks to the fact that, once again, we have a Seahawks team that is really struggling to figure out the screen game. And it's really frustrating, but, and I understand that you're running certain things in your playbook to set up other plays. I understand that you're running those screens in part to set things up on the next play or the play after that. But if you're going to be that incompetent at running screen passes, you got to throw that stuff out of your playbook. I'm sorry. Like, and what is going on in practice where they're running these screen passes and they apparently look good enough to feel like you can run that in a game, and then you get to the game and you run it and it's that bad. Like the JSN screen where he's 8 yards in the backfield with 3 Niners right on top of him, and you throw him the ball and he's at a standstill. What do you think is going to happen? How does that play get in the playbook? How does that play occur to anybody as a good idea? So that's certainly an argument for this not really being a big knock on Sam Darnold and his ability to play football. I think that your stance on Sam Darnold going into this game should be by and large about the same as it is coming out. What I am thinking about, though, because the frustration doesn't end here. Like, losing this much win probability on 4 plays on screens is beyond not okay. But we also got this from field goals here. There were only 2 play action passes that whole game. The Seahawks had play action twice. I think the league average on play action is like 30% or 28% or something like that. We had 8%. And one of our play actions led to Sam Darnold scrambling. We had 1 PA pass, and it was the JSN catch on the touchdown drive. That one, I think, just can't be defended. I think that one is just an absolute disaster class. I think that one is just Kubiak completely forgetting what he's doing and completely forgetting what this team is supposed to be about. And by the way, I want to stress this real quick because I know somebody's going to say it. Play action works with or without an effective running game. Play action is effective even if your running game is not very good. So it's not we abandoned play action because the running game wasn't working. And by the way, guys, I know my voice sounds a little bit rough still. I'm sorry, but I'm working through it. Sunday was tough on all of us, but I want to say that right now. The ineffectiveness of the running game does not mean play action becomes ineffective. You can still do it. And I'm looking at this, and then you had Nemhauser here who did a full breakdown of EPA per play splits on under center versus shotgun, and you have to wonder what happened. Just to run it down real quick, the Seahawks were slightly negative on EPA on under center overall, and they were very negative in shotgun. Negative 0.27 per play. That's a disaster. Negative 0.04 isn't what you want to be, but it's a lot better. Run plays, you can see that under center was slightly worse, okay, but it's basically even. It's about the same thing. But look at the massive discrepancy here between under center passing plays and shotgun passing plays. Passing plays under center, we were actually elite in terms of generating EPA. But we didn't get the actual points because we inevitably would turn back to the shotgun. And I know that it's a small sample size. I understand that. I get that. But this paints a very clear picture that the team was more effective by a long shot on offense when they went under center. And yet we went under center about, 15% of the time on passes and 62% of the time on runs. Do the math. It's way less than half. It's not even close to half. That's bizarre. Here's what I'm going to say, though, about it, because I'm trying to figure out how this happened. Clint Kubiak is not a dummy. Clint Kubiak has called plays in the NFL before. He's been a play caller in the NFL for multiple teams. He's never been great, but the thing that people need to understand is that if he was great, he'd be a head coach right now. That's how this works. He's had moments of good stuff, hasn't been able to put it all together into one really good season yet, but this is clearly somebody who can do this job. This is clearly somebody who has shown that this is something he can do. His dad did it for decades. Kubiak is not some dummy. Kubiak is not somebody who doesn't know how to do this like Grubb. Grubb had never worked in the NFL before last year. Shane Waldron had never called plays in the NFL or I think at any level before we hired him. Those guys, you could argue they didn't know what they were doing, and you might be right. This guy should know what he's doing, and I'm just scratching my head wondering how this happened because there is some stuff in that game that comes down to the players. But looking, oh my goodness. That's the one thing about being a YouTube content creator, people. You do exhaust your voice. Like, how is this the game plan? How is this the formula? It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me because we were told we were going to see a lot of under center stuff when the season would get underway. And what I'm hoping is not the case. What I'm worried about is that he sees something with the players that he doesn't trust, and it forces him to abandon his plan. He doesn't trust certain players to get it done the way he wants. I hope that's not it. I hope we're not saddling him, who I do, again, think is a pretty good offensive mind, with players that cannot execute what he wants. I hope that's not it, because that would be something that speaks to a pretty incompetent organization. All right, moving along here, another EPA stat, just kind of a raw number here. The Seahawks offense was the worst in the entire NFL on third down, negative 0.7 EPA per play on third down, which is way lower than the next team. The next lowest team was like negative 0.5. So as much as the team did improve their pass protection, the pass protection was pretty good. There's still something going on third down that is not right. And I did try to take a look at some of the clips from that game. I did try to get a feel for some of the things happening in that game on second look. And I think part of it might be that Sam Darnold is locking on to JSN as his first read over and over and over again, and he's not moving on to his next read. And that's a big reason why JSN was by far, by some massive, ridiculous amount, the most targeted player on the team. That's why he produces so much. And I don't know, as somebody who was trying to watch and understand what was going on, I think that might have been the bigger problem than the offensive line protection. The fact that we actually got good pass protection should excite you as a Seahawks fan, and it does speak to some promise going forward, but the fact that we still were so bad on third down, and this is ultimately what costs you games. What you do on third down and fourth down is everything in this league. For us to still be this bad on third down, I'm just trying to understand it. And the main thing I come away with after rewatching that game and looking at some of the things in that game is I feel like Darnold's locking on. And you can't be doing that in the NFL, especially when your team, everybody knows who your first read is going to be, because this team is so clearly putting JSN as the number one target. More Ken Walker versus Charbonnet stuff real quick. Again, Ken Walker really didn't do anything. Negative 0.36 EPA per play, 30% success rate. Charbonnet basically even on EPA per play, 67% success rate. Again, I just want this team to. I don't know if you want to abandon the gap running stuff, but the way it looked on Sunday, I blame that way more than the individual players and the backfield. We also had this from Hawk Blogger, early down passing. Seattle was very, very close to the bottom of the league in early down passing in this game, which is not surprising, but Darnold was very good on early downs. Darnold went 11 for 16 for 129 yards and 5 first downs when they did pass on early downs. So 16 attempts, you're talking about 8 yards per attempt and 5 first downs. And remember, that's early down stuff. You can pick up 8 yards on first down. It's a good play, and you didn't get the first down. So that's actually something that is notable. Now, my gut tells me that if you started passing more on early downs, the efficiency would fall off. But if the run blocking continues to be what it was, where we can't count on it the way it was on Sunday, then you might not really have much of a choice. We might have to open this up a little bit. And I know that's the worst case scenario for this offense. I know that this formula is to run the ball. I know that our formula is ultimately to pound it. And we don't have a great plan B because we have one great receiver and that's it. And we have a pretty middle of the road quarterback. I wonder if maybe at some point you have to just try to let it fly a little bit more than this. We're literally down there with the Jets. We had basically the same early down pass frequency as the Jets, who have Justin Fields at quarterback. We're down there with the Ravens, who have Lamar Jackson at quarterback. Look at a team like the Eagles. We all know what they do. We all know what they like to do. They like to run the ball. And they're still like 10% higher than us. So, a long video, I know. I usually don't like making videos this long, but I really wanted to pull this apart, and I didn't want to split it into 2 videos, so I don't know. Watch it on your lunch break. Most people get a half-hour lunch break at least, right? So you should be able to get through the whole video in half an hour. Let me know what you guys think. It's just, I'm trying to understand, guys, because, again, I want to stress this. Kubiak is not some dummy. Kubiak is somebody who has done this before, and he hasn't been great at it, but on a general sense, on a general level of competency, he can do this. So, I don't know what else to say. All right. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Probably another video coming later today. Tuesday always tends to be the slower day. But like I said, I'm going to stream later. See you guys later. Go Hawks.